first of all, I would like to thank Mr. Herman Smith from United Nations SNA Division for your precious time, for giving some time for us in our joint meeting. So I think this is a very important session, because to keep us alert about the progress, and 2020 is very near to us actually. And then from my experience, this will be the sixth version of SNA. So the first version will be 1953, and then perhaps from the perspective of audience, some of them are already involved in task team established to pursue this review of SNA 2008. And I would like to invite participants, especially for those who have a question and clarification, you can post it in the chat box. And without further ado, I think I will pass the session to Mr. Herman Smith to continue with your presentation. Please, thank you.
Okay, thank you much. I cannot see anything that's going on in the room, so if you want to stop me, please do that. So I will talk about the process towards the 2025 SNA, and particularly concentrate on the consolidated list of recommendations. Now, this is a picture that many of you may have seen before. We've actually started to work on the update process for the SNA in 2018. So it's already 5 years in the making. The Commission, the United Nations Statistical Commission, launched the update in March 2020. It allowed us 2020 to 2023 to do some work on developing, work on the research and the priority topics. And we are close to preparing the recommendations for the Commission to be adopted early next year. In the meantime, we also started to draft the SNA. In the end, we foresee that the Commission will adopt the new SNA in 2025. Now, similarly, we have also the update of the balance of payments manual, following a similar path than the SNA. Now, the key features of the update process deals with first the technical research issues on the priorities, mainly globalization, digitalization, and well-being and sustainability, and a few others. So we've formed task teams to work on these issues. Another element is to broadly consult on the update process. This event is one of the consultations that we see in this process. But for all the guidance notes, they were sent to all countries to provide their comments on each of the guidance notes that we've provided. In terms of the next element is to ensure consistency between the various statistical standards, here particularly the balance of payments, also the classifications, and in some cases also the environmental accounts, government finance, statistics, and the like. And then a fourth element deals with experimentation, first of all, for to test the feasibility of the implementation for the recommendations, and then also to embark on a program of early implementation. In terms, and as I said, we are already preparing some of the chapters for the 25 SNA, and the initial focus is to look at those that are new or will be substantially revised. In this category, there are about 16 of these chapters, of which 7 joint chapters, SNA and balance of payments chapters. But the idea here is that we would have the same text in the SNA and in the balance of payments. For those of you that are familiar with the current balance of payments manual in the SNA, we talk about the same things, saying it a little bit different, and in some cases that causes confusion. This time around, we will have the same text. There's a whole process of dealing with the chapters. It will be reviewed by stakeholders, the advisory expert group, and the balance of payments management committee. We prepared outlines for these chapters that went also for consultation. And the chapters are being developed based on these annotated outlines, the comments from the global consultations, and the relevant guidance notes for these chapters. In this whole process, we've also developed and if I talk about the whole SNA and balance of payments up to team developed a common and harmonized glossary of terms and definitions. And we also looked at government finance, monetary finance, and also the environmental accounts. We anticipate that this glossary will also be used for these macroeconomic statistics standards. And it was initially developed by communications task team, and they started off with about more than 1,200 terms, and it was whittled down to about 732 terms. And we worked through each of these terms where we looked at existing definitions, discussed these, and proposed a harmonized definition for each. There are a few terms and definitions still outstanding. We will see that that will be finalized towards the end of this year, which is not too far from where we are at the moment. So, yeah, in the recent advisory expert group and balance of payments committee meetings, they were discussed. We incorporated also comments from the government finance and minority finance in the whole work, and we will make this finalized glossary available publicly shortly, and we will also translate this work and make it available electronically, most probably through an API type of environment where you can search for it. Eventually, when we have the finalized SNA, we will also link the glossary with the SNA so that you can find those terms quite easily. I mentioned early implementation earlier. First of all, it followed a program of to test feasibility of certain of the guidance notes. And the second element is early implementation to assist countries in preparing for the implementation of the SNA update even before the Commission adopts it in 2025. Now, how do we plan to do that? Is by developing best practice guidelines to help countries with the implementation of the recommendations, and also to encourage countries to work on early implementation plans. I mean, as you can understand, we bring in new things, new sources of data need to be developed, and we need to guide countries in how to do that. And also for countries to gain an understanding of the actual impact of all these recommendations on their work. And not all recommendations will be involved in this early implementation. And we foresee that we will concentrate on those that would have an effect on key aggregates like GDP and some others with some methodological challenges. Now, we've identified various groups of guidance notes or recommendations. First of all, those of high priority, where we think it's important to provide guidance as soon as possible. And for these, we've already established 3 task teams with the representation fairly widespread throughout the world. The first one deals with the recording of data in the national accounts. Then there's a second one led by the IMF on the payments for non-produced knowledge-based capital, and basically dealing with marketing assets, which are now no longer non-produced assets, but produced assets. And then we have an expert group led by the OECD dealing with the various natural capital issues that we now also bring into the SNA. And the crypto asset issue, the IMF is helping us with developing guidance in how to measure this issue. Other medium priority issues deals with artificial intelligence, cloud computing, how to deal with digital intermediation platforms, hybrid insurance and pension products. These are, of course, not conceptual problems, but more compilation issues, whereas high priority issues deal with the conceptual, more conceptual issues. We've identified some low priority issues, which also may be more or less relevant to countries. How to deal with free products, the treatment of retained earnings, and then also the statistical framework for the informal economy. And of course, here for some countries in your region, this may be more important than any of the others. But again, here it's not conceptual difficulties, but more having a standardized framework for the informal economy, which is closely collaborated with the ILO. Now, in terms of the compilation guidance that we are proposing, is that apart from the taskings that I've talked about, we will also consider further guidance that may be helpful, and we are working on an assessment for proposed plans to provide these compilation guidance, and for this we will look at those that involve the conceptual change and where additional data items are required, or where changes where it's considered that the compilation guidance might be helpful. Now, there are several areas then. In many cases, the work has commenced already. In other cases, we are working on plans to provide guidance that still needs to be developed. And many of the other areas that we provide more clarifications and guidance in the SNA, there are already existing guidance to support the compilers, particularly here we talk about some of the digital environment, the digital supply and use framework, globalization. There's quite a bit of work already completed there. So we hope that by the time that the Commission adopts the 2025 SNA, that we would have quite a large body of work available for this guidance. We're also planning to have a compilers hub, a centralized place where we could provide the guidance material. And I mean, of course, the development of compilation guidance will continue in 2025 and later, particularly to take into account experience as companies start to implement the new recommendations. So we recognize that it's better to have more than less guidance, but we also recognize that preparing guidance material comes at a cost, and we have scarce resources and expertise to deal with this. And we are working to find volunteers to help us, organizations that are willing to take the lead in preparing some of these guidance. And we are also working on priorities, prioritize the elements that we would like to see, so that we have an ideal balance between what is important and what is regional in practice. The next element on the implementation program, or the SNA update program, deals with the outreach. We've organized quite a number of outreach events, quite a number of regional webinars, and thank you also for allowing me to talk to you at this particular event. Recently did it in Africa, in Latin America, in Europe as well, and we foresee also similar outreach at other points. There's upcoming next week, we will have an OECD conference on where we will also talk about this. We presented the SNA update to the World Statistics Congress. There will be some additional ones in Europe. We also had a webinar on the consolidated list of changes that is in August. In that there's that seminar on the consolidated list of changes is available on the update website. At the end of my presentation, there's a link that you can use to access that. Of course, there's a wealth of information on the website towards the 25 SNA, and you can visit that to see quite a number of interesting information about the whole process. I also talked about the global consultations on the guidance notes, the annotated outline. We recently had the consultation on the consolidated list of changes, and also the first chapter 2 on well-being and sustainability, went through global consultation. Of course, the reports of the IWCNA Secretariat Working Group for National Accounts to the Commission also provides you with updates on what's going on. We are also planning to have 2 rounds of regional outreach seminars, which we will do in collaboration with the IMF's balance of payments update team. We foresee a first round to be virtual to cover the various changes. We will target national accountants and balance of payments compilers, particularly in the areas where around the joint chapters, and then specific sessions for the balance of payment in the SNA. And we hope to have something like that in the ESCAP region early next year. But I only recently contacted Alec about that, so we will follow up on that. So we will start with those seminars in November. I mean, it's fairly global, November till mid next year. We would like to collaborate with the regional institutions, the regional commissions in conducting these seminars. We plan a second round later in 24 and 25 to following the endorsement of the 25 and SNA Balance of Payments Manual 7. And here we would like to target more senior officials, and it's most likely that these seminars will be in person. We will focus more on the methodological changes and the requirements in terms of data, and also dealing with implementation planning, the timelines and possible capacity development needs that countries may have. But the modalities for those seminars are still under consideration. And as we move forward, I'm sure you will also come up with ideas on how to deal with these kinds of seminars. And of course, we had an implementation strategy for the 25 SNA. I mean, the steering group on economic statistics of ESCAP is also a result of the implementation of the 2008 SNA planning implementation that took place quite a number of years ago, and it developed in this forum that you have at the moment, which I really think is an excellent way of sharing information and moving plans for all the countries in the region forward. Now, we recently had a discussion, initial discussion with the advisory expert group on an implementation strategy, and we will work on that forward. We will also, it will certainly undergo a broader consultation. We will finalize this implementation strategy together with the submission of the SNA to the Commission in 2025. Just to give you an idea of how much forward looking as we are at the moment with the implementation of the 2025 SNA. in the case of the 2008 SNA, we did everything after the Commission already adopted it. And you can also see that the uptake in implementing 2008 SNA took quite a while before there was some momentum to it. And hopefully by now, starting earlier, we will have an earlier uptake of the 25 SNA than what we had before. Now, this body of work is not possible because we don't do it in a vacuum. We are also working with other people. And particularly, there's a very close relationship between the SNA update team and the PPM update team. We talk to each other quite regularly. We develop guidance notes together. We develop chapters together. And so we really work in tandem. We had several joint advisory expert group meetings and balance of payments committee meetings. And that helped us also to eliminate quite a bit of duplication. We involve the government finance statistics, the monetary finance statistics, and the environmental accounts communities. On top of that, we also had them involved in developing the glossary. In several cases, they also participated in developing the guidance notes and also are reviewing several draft chapters. We also work closely with the International Labour Organization, particularly for the drafting of Chapter 16 dealing with labour. There's also a Chapter 34, the measuring of well-being, dealing with various employment issues and volunteer work, and also household production for services. And we closely collaborated with them in developing the guidance for the informal economy. My colleagues at UNSD working on time use, particularly for the household service work, was involved quite deeply in Chapter 34 development. And our colleagues on the classifications, the ISIC and CPC, calculus, producers, data, artificial intelligence, visual platforms, and the like are issues that that required to be addressed in ISIC and CPC. And those of you that followed the updates of the ISIC and CPC would also be aware of that. There's also a G20 data gaps initiative, and some of the work that comes out of that initiative also has an effect on the SNA, and so it's fed also into our work here. I would like to turn now more to the consolidated list of changes. So this consolidated list of changes was derived from the various guidance notes that were produced. There were 65 of them. And there were also additional some issues notes, because once we started to put these various guidance notes were developed separate from each other. Once we started to put them together, we realized that there's some consistency issues that we need to look at, and some other issues that came up. So for those, we've prepared some issue notes. In the SNA News and Notes, the publication of the ISWGNA, We've already provided some guidance after the 2008 SNA since then, and the advisory expert group with these various meetings over a number of years also came up with certain recommendations. These things were all taken together, and the consolidated list of changes was then developed. Initially, it was a master log, literally a spreadsheet that summarized all these recommendations and classified also the recommendations to the various chapters. And it helped us to understand the impact of the changes to the 2008 SNA. Now, this initial master log was then a starting point to draft a more accessible and concise document on the changes of the 2008 SNA. And that was put forward for consultation during August and September, this past August and September. This gives you a graph. We only had 3 questions in it because most of the guidance notes were already went through global consultation. So what we were interested in terms of the list of recommendations, if these recommendations were clear, straightforward, and unambiguous, if they are consistent, and if there are any other comments. So you can see that the yes for the first 2 is overwhelming, and that we've received also quite a bit of comments. We've received about 100 responses, which is quite good. I think for the guidance notes, depending on the topic, range from about 40 to 80. We had one with 140 responses, but that was in crypto assets. So the 100 responses, in our view, was quite a good response. The recent AG meeting took place about 2 weeks ago, discussed these global consultations, the outcome of the global consultation, and we will now finalize this document for submission by the Commission at its next meeting, February-March of 2024. We will also provide a background document. So this will be in the document. The list of recommendations will be one of the main documents for the Commission, and it will then automatically be translated in all the languages, which is also helping us with the accessibility to it. We will provide also a background document to describe the feedback that we've received from the global consultation, and also how we plan to deal with that feedback in the SNA. Now, the recommendations go in 3 categories. First of all, the conceptual changes. Then we have a group that we call the additional tables or data items. And then there's quite a number of clarifications and guidance that we provide on the for the new SNA. Now, this picture you would not be able to read what it's on there, but take it as a picture, a whole list of guidance notes and the particular guidance that are being provided. And the conceptual changes are the ones that are shown here in red and pink. So if you can look at the conceptual changes, they are not in terms of all the recommendations that we make. There are not that many. The blue and darker, almost black part here deals with the additional data items and tables. So you can see that there's a broader element of that. The yellow and green at the end deals with clarification. So you can see that there's quite a lot of clarification in that we bring in. There are some inconsistencies or some language in the 2008 SNA, for instance, that's not very clear around pensions, for instance, which we hope will be clearer, and that will fall in this green and yellow category. If we turn to the recommendations for conceptual change, in terms of some general observations there, as I indicated, there's a limited number of changes that would affect the macroeconomic indicators, and these include data, marketing assets, how we treat biological resources. You would also recall we now include also the recording of depletion of natural resources as a cost of production. We split the natural resource assets between the extractor and the owner. There's some addressing some inconsistencies with the sum of cost methods, and there's some changes to the output of central banks, and then there are some other minor changes that didn't have an effect on the macroeconomic indicators. If we turn to data specific, the 2008 SNA recognized data as produced assets, but not the information content of that data. For the 2025 SNA, we also recognize that the information content of electronic data that are collected, so that's then also produced assets. We will value that using the sum of cost method. This includes the cost of planning, preparing, developing, how to access the data, and storing it, the designing and organization, the testing and analyzing the data. And of course, we also include the consumption of capital and the return to capital. And this may have an impact on GDP. In terms of marketing assets, in the 2008 SNA, it is only recognized as non-produced, non-financial assets, and it was also limited to explicit purchases of the relevant assets. In the 25 SNA, we recognize marketing assets as produced assets, extending therefore the asset and the production boundaries with these assets produced for own final use. Again, they will be valued using the sum of cost method. Again, an effect on GDP and net worth. An element that we bring in now is the explicit recognition of renewable energy resources, which include things like solar, wind, and geothermal energy. We also bring in 3 changes and clarifications related to the choice between cultivated and non-cultivated resources, which we now will differentiate as migrating resources as non-cultivated and non-migrating resources, which are cultivated based on intensely continuum between intensely managed to those undisturbed resources that are being harvested And there's some other clarifications on the measurement of work in progress. Now, we do not expect a large impact on GDP and no impact on net worth. So in the 2008 SNA, the depletion of natural resources treated as another change in volume of assets. So, and we recommend now for the 25 SNA to record it as a cost of production, similarly in the way that you would record the consumption of fixed capital. Now, this change will only have an impact on net domestic product, and particularly in the cases where countries are resource rich. Now, the split asset approach, where you split the ownership between the legal owner and the extractor, and the 2008 SNA, the natural resources were all recorded in the accounts of the legal owner, which is typically the government. For the 25 SNA, we will use the environmental accounting approach. They record them in the accounts of the legal owner and the extractor according to the appropriation of the resource rent. Only the changes in the ownership between the legal owner and the extractor, which we call then the economic owner, will be recorded as other changes in volume. And of course here, no changes in GDP or NDP, only in terms of the allocation of the relevant assets across the sectors would have an impact. Now, we're also working on improving the consistency of the sum of cost method. We see the sum of cost method as an approximation of market prices that we use. But for market producers, particularly when we value production for own final use, we include the cost elements like intermediate consumption, compensation of employees, consumption of fixed capital, also the net return to fixed capital, and some taxes and subsidies from production. But we don't do that for non-market producers. We exclude the return to fixed capital when we measure the sum of cost method for non-market producers. We also exclude payment for rent and depletion. Now, for the 2025 SNA, we would like to have all relevant output values using the return of capital as well. We would also like to include the return on non-financial assets other than fixed assets, such as inventories, and even non-produced non-financial assets. Although we exclude city parks and historical monuments on pragmatic grounds. We will also include rent as a cost element and the relevant depletion. Now, this may affect GDP and have a moderate impact on net worth, because I mean we bring it in for market producers, and we would also like to see that for non-market producers. In the case of central banks, we've revisited the work the central bank output calculations. In the 2008 SNA, we said that that you could measure FISM for the central bank, and that there are particularly two types of services that are being provided by the central bank, mainly monetary policy services, which could be which we're seen as non-market, and then supervisory services, which we see as which could be market. And this whole non-market output was then allocated to government. Now for the 2025 SNA, we would exclude FISM on conceptual grounds, and the arguments around that. We would like also to extend the services being provided by the central bank, such as promoting the financial stability or monitoring the payment system. We consider all output as non-market, and the payments that financial corporations make directly to the central bank would be current transfers, and we would record the output of the central bank as output for own final use. And the changes that take place here is related to the way that we record the transfers. There are some other minor conceptual changes dealing with reinvested earnings. We extend the definition of rent somewhat. Also, the case of work in progress for fixed assets that takes a long time to be developed, but that we also extend it to other types of assets that take place. There's some adjustments to how we deal with concessional loans, the equity of international organizations, and securities provided as collateral. So these are dealing with some of the minor issues. If we now turn to the recommendations for additional tables and data, here we make a distinction between the sequence of economic accounts, which we see as the standard set of accounts and tables that we expect countries would compile. That would help us with international comparability, and we will also base a so-called minimum data requirement on the sequence of accounts. Then we would supplement this information with supplementary tables and items. We did away with the term satellite accounts and call it now extended and thematic accounts and tables. Now, we cannot oblige countries to follow the SNA, but we really hope that they will be able to that as many countries as possible will compile the sequence of economic accounts, and encourage those that could to compile the supplementary tables, the extended and thematic accounts. Now, covering some of the priority areas and the extensions that we would like to have. So to improve our analysis of the distribution of income, consumption, saving, and wealth, we would like to see a standard breakdown of households by income and wealth result, and also provide more detailed labor accounts. We also propose various breakdowns on households, namely household composition, source of income, supplementary items. We propose also work on unpaid household service work, education in human capital and health. I mean, for these extended and thematic accounts, there's already a large body of work available on these extended and thematic accounts, So the SNA will only provide the link to that work, and I mean we cannot expand the current almost 750 pages, probably going to 900 pages. Cannot add any additional things to it anymore. We would
Herman,
also like.
Herman, can you can you wind up the rest of the slide, because we need to adjourn to the main room about 3 minutes.
Yeah, so I can talk for another half an hour, but let me skip then through it. So I think around the well-being and sustainability issues, there are quite a bit of these additional work that we would like to see. You can have a look at the slides and to see the elements that we have there. Also in terms of the digitalization, where we have the digital supply use framework that we bring in there. Some particular items on financial risk and vulnerabilities as well that would provide us with additional items. Maybe I go through this general comments on the clarifications and guidance, where we propose to use net domestic product to assess volume changes alongside GDP. I think that's an important issue. We emphasize the evaluation principles and methodologies. And very importantly, with development of the glossary, we will also have several terms that we will change. So that those are some of the general observations that I think would be useful to look at. I invite you to look at the webinar that we had on the list of changes that is available on our website. So let me. You may be familiar with the SNA 2025 SNA, where we have the website link there. We also have it for the balance of payment. And that webinar is a link is available in my slides. So I will stop here, and if there are any questions, I would be happy to answer. I mean, you can also write to me at that email address. Thanks.
Thank you, Herman. And I appreciate for comprehensive explanation throughout all the slides. And also there are some requests from participants to get the slides. So as mentioned by the secretariat, we will upload it at the main page of the meeting later on. And for the time being, if you have any short question that you want to pose to Herman, please raise your hand, or else you may convey the message through the email or any platform that provided in the slide presentation just now. So how about it, Adik? Any comment from you?
Not from me, but maybe people have something from the audience. Feel free to, yes. Hamish, I can see your hand.
Anyone of you to okay, yes. Hamish, thank you. Proceed, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. It was really nice to see a bit more of a summary of what is a lot of work over many years, and a lot of things happening. What I've got maybe a sort of a specific question about how some of the changes interact with each other. So just bear with me while I. So in the split asset approach, and you're allocating the assets based on who's getting the resource rent. So for a number of quite resource countries that have lots of natural resources, the government takes ownership or takes a lot of the resource rent in some places. And I wondered how it seems like if we then use the sum of costs and include depletion in the sum of costs, then that will change their total output in gross terms, but in net terms, if you then take off the depletion again, there might not be such a big impact. Am I off? Can you comment on that? And am I off the mark somewhere there?
Yeah, no, I mean that's one of the areas where even I get confused, and many people get confused about it. I mean, in terms of the resource rents that go to government, so what we see here and why we propose a split asset approach is that the resource rents are more than the royalties that are being received by government. And in the case of the cost of depletion in government output would only be where they are actually owning or working the mine themselves, and not in the case of split asset approach, because it only receives the rents and it's not a cost of production for government. So it receives the rent as in the past. We initially wanted to, we were looking into recording rent as production, but that was a bridge too far. So we will record rent as income and not as production. So in that sense, then government output would not be affected by the split asset approach.
Thank you for clarifying that. That's very good. Thank you.
Just last observation from my side as a national accountant, maybe for quite a while. So I'm more interested on the major changes or significant changes to the GDP value. So in terms of come up with a development policy and in terms of economic planning. So this is really matters to us actually, and perhaps quite a number of initiatives that we need to collect a new data, especially because in terms of recording the transaction and so on. And I would like to thank also about the some clarification on the data digitalization, well-being and globalization, which is we have that question unanswered for the last SNA version. So thank you for the effort for the team, and look forward to participate actively in terms of how we could early implementing some of the recommendation. Yeah, thank you.
My pleasure. Looking forward to talk in more detail, because there's the webinar that I talked about. We plan to have that over 3 days instead of only an hour. So hopefully we can go in a bit more depth in that. And by that time, we may also have some more information about the guidance that we need to provide, and particularly some experience, and particularly dealing with the data issue, the marketing asset issues, and some of these natural resource issues that we would like to bring in. We see those 3 areas as having the biggest impact for this.
With that, I would like to thank Herman for your contribution, and also participation from various institutions in this side session. So we will meet in another session hopefully. through virtual meeting and so on. So thank you very much to all, and I give back to Alec.
Oh, thanks, Herman, and especially for staying up late on the other side of the planet, and thanks for sharing. And I think to the audience, I think we've heard that there are a lot of outreach events that we can still participate and raise questions and still influence this process as it's going along. So thank you so much. And at this